Okay, so I just bought this book. It's the Hockey News, the Fantasy Pool Guide. I haven't played fantasy hockey in a while, so I decided I might do it this year. So they have the Maple Leafs top 10 prospect list in there. So I'm just going to say who they were and whether they're going to make the NHL or not, so where they're going to be playing next year. And if they do make the NHL, I'm going to predict how many points that they might be able to get. So obviously the top prospect would be Austin Matthews, and they're predicting that he's going to get 28 goals and 37 assists for 65 points. I feel like this would be a great season for Austin Matthews, so more realistically I think he's going to get 50 to 60 in between that round, so in between there, so probably 50 points to 60 points, which would still be a pretty good year. He can't get the 65 points, but I feel like 50 to 60 would be more realistic. So my prediction is 26 goals with 30 assists for 56 points. I feel like any Leaf fan would take this. So hopefully he can get up to around there. I'm pretty sure he will be able to. Second, they have listed as William Nylander. So they predict 21 goals, 34 assists for 55 points. This is a very realistic point total for Nylander. He easily can get to this. So I feel like this is very reasonable. My prediction is 24 goals, 28 assists for 52 points. So right around what they predicted. So, and especially if he plays with Austin Matthews, they can feed off each other and be around the same in point total. So I feel like this is very easy for him to obtain. Next is Mitch Marner. So they predict he's going to get 15 goals, 34 assists for 49 points. If he plays with the Leafs this year, he very well could get to this. So my prediction is 18 goals and 30 assists for 48 points, which would be a great point total for his first year in the NHL. If he doesn't stick with the Leafs, I believe he will get that 9-game tryout pretty much, and he might get like 3 points around there if he doesn't stick. So I think he's going to make the Leafs this year, so 48 points was most likely around where he might get. So fourth on their list, they have Kasperi Kapanen. They don't have any predictions for him, so I assume they don't think he's going to make it to the NHL this year. But I think he's going to play at least 15 to 20 games in that range and get 7 to 11 points. So, especially after the trade deadline when they might be trading Milan Michalek because he's got 1 year, Brooks Lake because he's got one year on his deal. So, a bunch of players with 1 year contracts, not as much as last year, but quite a bit this year. So he could play throughout this the stretch, so the end games of the schedule because of the trade deadline. Next is Brendan Leipsic. They have him. They don't. So the rest of the players I name off, they didn't give up any predictions. So I'm just gonna go off what I think. So he also could very well play 15 to 20 games with 7 to 11 points. Especially after that trade deadline, there might be more roster spots for the Marlies that come up and play, just like happened last year. Next, they have Travis Dermott. See, the thing about this is because he plays in the OHL, they have the CHL and AHL agreement. So he will be 20 before the cutoff date of December 31st. So with this agreement, either if they don't make the NHL team, they have to get sent down to the OHL unless they played 4 OHL or 4 CHL seasons, or they're 20 before the December 31st. So he will be 20 before December 31st, so he will be eligible for the AHL. So I believe he's going to spend most of his year with the Marlies. Might get a couple games with the Maple Leafs, but I'm pretty sure he's just going to spend most of his time with the Marlies. Next, they have Tobias Lindberg. So he also will most likely play with the Marlies. He might get a handful of games with the Maple Leafs, but most of his year, I believe he's going to be with the Marlies. I went to see a game about 3 or 4 games after he got traded to Toronto, and I was really impressed with him. So he might make more than a couple of starts for the Leafs, but I believe he's only going to get a handful of starts, although he is quite the talented player. Next, they have Connor Brown. So he's got a pretty decent chance of making the NHL club out of training camp, so preseason. He probably will start the year off with the Marlies, but I can see him playing 30 to 40 games with 15 to 22 points. He's put up some pretty good point totals with the Marlies last couple years, and so he could be a player to watch for at least half the season, hopefully. Next, they have Carl Grundstrom. This is a player that they drafted this year. I believe he's going to spend at least 1 or 2 more years with Modo in the Swedish Elite League. So he can be eligible to come play for the Marlies, but I think this year he's going to stay in Sweden. And last, they have Dmytro Timashov, which he also turns 20 before the December 31st cutoff date, so he is eligible to play in the AHL, which I believe that's where he's going to be playing for the rest of for this year. So I don't think he'll get very many games with the Leafs this year, but I'm sure he'll play most of the year with AHL. So tell me if you liked this video. If you didn't like it, comment whichever comments you want to comment. Like and subscribe to the channel, and have a nice day.